Here.
Call to order the meeting of the Industrial Development Agency for Wyoming County. And I'll start with Scott to have a roll call to establish a quorum.
Okay, Scott Gardner, IDA staff.
Kevin Zanner, IDA counsel.
Joe Guzowski, staff,
Nicole Hastings, IDA board.
board.
Becky Ryan, board, IDA.
IDA, Mark Dad, IDA Board.
Burwanger IDA board.
Tom McCormick, IDA board.
Jim Pierce, IDA staff.
Jennifer Tishka, IDA staff. Robin Marshalek, IDA staff.
Joe Kemp, EFPR auditor.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We all have a copy of the minutes of the November 14th meeting. They seem to be fairly brief. And if nobody has an objection, I will let you read them later. So we'll vote on them first. I don't know if you have some. Yes, I have to ask someone later.
Make motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we also have the financial reports for November and December, and Robin, could you give us any highlights?
Yes, well, we can start with November, just quickly go through. We had 201,343 cash on hand and 1,881,549 invested funds. We brought in fees that month. The 372 included fees from the Alley Cat project, which was a 20% fee for their signing the project agreement and getting their sales tax. So it wasn't their full fee. We had our regular monthly expenses, nothing out of the ordinary with expenses. The other disbursements was the Neisler employer contribution. That's an annual payment. And then we ended up the month with 495,613 cash on hand and 1,885,581 invested funds. So I won't go over the budget on November because we'll do it in December. But going over into December, we brought in some management fees from the BAC and the business center. We had our typical monthly expenses, and we ended up the month with 508,844 cash on hand, and again 1,885,581 invested funds. And on the back, as you can see, this was our last month for our operating expenses on our budget, and we actually brought in more fees and more revenue than we thought we would. We're only about 62% overall with our expenses, and we went over a little bit with our salary expenses, but we have to make an adjustment because we did have a large adjustment last year. So that's the report.
Any discussion or questions?
How much cash on hand do we typically try to carry?
Enough to cover payroll for a few months and anything else that we might have coming up.
So you'll probably put that balance in a.
And a CD, yeah, when the CDs come up, and yeah.
And did the CDs, the interest doesn't show up in the income side, it just rolls back into the investment funds, the interest from the CD?
Correct.
Yeah,
And those rates are coming down a little bit, as we all know.
Thank goodness.
Did you still get 4%,
4.15.
4.15? Okay, thank you. Is that for 5 months,
6 months.
6 months.
for 6 months?
Anything further? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve both reports.
I'll make a motion to approve the reports.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
No. We'll go to the review of the 2024 audit.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to welcome back Joe from EFPR, Joe Keem, who did our audit last year, did a very good job for us. We're very pleased with the work that he did. And I think everyone on the board remembers Joe from last year, if we have any new faces here. So Joe's likes to come in before the audit actually starts and kind of give an overview of the plan. So Joe has asked if he could join us for the meeting today and give that overview.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. This is actually our third go around, which is hard to believe. It seems like only yesterday. You should have in your packet. Yours doesn't quite look like this, but yours has some color.
They have a pretty one.
You have pretty ones. This is basically the audit plan. The plan covers both the IDA as well as the BAC. We end up issuing two financial statements. There is one for the IDA, which incorporates the BAC, and then there's a standalone financial statement for the BAC as well. This document really kind of covers the both audits. Basically, you've engaged us to perform an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. So there will be two reports that appear in the financial statements. There'll be a report that covers the financial statements themselves, and then there's a separate report that is required under government auditing standards for internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. So you've engaged us to do that. The engagement letters have been signed and returned, so we are good to go there. We'll also, should something come up that is a non-control matter, we'd be issuing a management letter, and perhaps some suggestions or future GASB implementation advice. We have a meeting both before the audit and at the end of the audit. As I understand, the March meeting is March 13th. So we have a meeting to review the draft financial statements so that there's a board approval so that they can be then submitted to the state by the March 31st deadline. There should be no issues with respect to meeting that deadline. We've met it the past 2 years. We typically start the audit in early February. That gives us more than enough time to get through that. We actually started before that because there's some things that happen behind the scenes before we actually do the field work. We also do a tax return for the BAC. So you've engaged us to do that. The engagement team members are Chris Johnson's the engagement partner. I think he did the rep meeting last year because I was out. I'm a retired partner. I basically, they keep me around to do things that I like to do. One of the things that I like to do are smaller not-for-profits and IDAs. So I do that only because I like to do it. Believe it or not, somebody likes auditing. From a management's responsibility, management's responsible for the financial statements. The only page in the whole packet of financial statements that belongs to us are the two auditors' reports. So you are responsible with board oversight for the contents of those financial statements and to establish effective internal controls and safeguard assets and select appropriate accounting principles. As new pronouncements come up, management, we have discussions with the team about how those were to be implemented. If there are adjustments that come up during the course of the audit, we discuss them, and management's responsible for posting those to the underlying books and records. Management's responsible to make sure that all financial records are provided to us. And then at the end of the engagement, we get a representation letter, basically attesting to all of the above. The audits the last 2 years have both gone exceptionally well. The first year was perhaps a little bit more painful than normal, only because it was first time through. So us getting up to speed on you getting up to speed on us, but the engagements have always gone very smoothly. There are minimal adjustments that are made. The only adjustments historically that have been made were client adjustments. that have come through because of the nature of closing timing. Some adjustments don't get posted to the ledger until after the fact. And then there's normally been one on the pension accounting, but this year we've given that template and everything to Robin, so I expect those would be adjusted. That's not the case for every organization that we audit, so that you should know that what you're seeing throughout the year is holding up at audit time, because typically on smaller organizations, auditors make adjustments. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. The engagement objectives, basically our objectives as part of the audit is to plan and perform an audit to enable us to render an opinion on the financial statements, to ensure that there's reasonable assurance that they're free of material misstatements. We do obtain an understanding of internal control, not to provide an opinion on internal control, but to basically enable us to generate an audit plan, not only generate and execute an audit plan to render an opinion on the financial statements. So as part of that process, we go through and we update the controls that are in place, and then we do some walkthroughs of some key controls. Is there approval of bank reconciliations? What is the board doing on a monthly basis from an oversight standpoint of the financial information and things like that. If there are any issues that come up during the engagement, we discuss them real time. That's part of the benefit of having a seasoned audit team. And we as a firm typically staff our engagements on the more experienced side, just because it's easier to deal with anything that might come up on a real-time basis rather than way after the fact. And again, I don't anticipate anything like that. We communicate our responsibilities in an engagement letter, which Jim has already signed. We're also responsible for providing an overview of the audit strategy, which is what this meeting is all about. There will be some inquiry. I know the chair, we have a discussion about things that may be of note that the board wants to talk about with us related to compliance with laws and regulations, and anything from a fraud consideration. We typically do that as well. If there are any control matters that should raise to the level of either a significant deficiency or a material weakness, we would be required to put those in the report on government auditing standards and internal control over financial reporting. Again, I don't anticipate anything, but because there is traditionally not many issues, I don't expect, given that it's a constant team that's been in place, it's not like there are new people involved from a financing standpoint, that there's training issues. So I don't expect that, but if there are, they would be communicated there. We work with management to ensure timely issuance. I like to start with when the due date is and kind of work backwards. With a March 13th date, I would expect to send financial statements a few days before that, so that everybody has an opportunity to absorb the information. And then work towards timely issuance so that they can be uploaded to the New York State system. And then lastly, we're required to maintain our independence. That's a hallmark of the accounting profession. And auditors in particular are required to be independent. So we take many steps behind the scenes to ensure that we are independent of every organization that we audit. From an audit approach, we look at things like internal controls, but in an organization of this size, we typically beat up the numbers. We look at the numbers, make sure that there's valid support for the numbers that are in place, for loans that are outstanding at the BAC level. There will be some confirmations sent, and otherwise there'll be some alternative audit procedures done with respect to balances. But basically, we work down the balance sheet and make sure that there's sufficient support for those numbers. And then we go through, and our work on the income statement or the profit and loss side is a combination of substantive testing of the balances, what is in there, is it appropriate, and as well as analytics year over year to look for variances that pop up that, why did this happen? And why is this different than that? In terms of our overall audit strategy, we focus on revenue recognition because it's always a key area. Is it being recognized in the appropriate period at the appropriate amount? Collectability of notes receivable at the BAC level, because there should be a process in place to evaluate loans. The collectability of those loans. Fraud risks always have to be considered just because of the nature of the audit environment. And then internal control over financial reporting. Again, it's something that is always considered. The next page, again, the plan scope. As I said before, we work basically down the balance sheet and ensure that there is sufficient support for all of the balance sheet accounts. And then we do a combination testing, the income statement. The overall timeline is on page 6. We basically have this meeting is kind of the kickoff process. We've already started that process. Listing of information was provided to management in terms of what we need to see. They've begun the process of uploading that information. And so from our standpoint, what we'd like to do is get as much of it done kind of behind the scenes before we come out and spend time in the field. That way we can deal with things that couldn't be done remotely, face-to-face, as well as any questions or things that might require some follow-up. So the planning meeting with you is today. We've already developed our audit strategy from that standpoint. I need to go through and update procedures and then do some key walkthroughs. We're scheduled for that week, February 10th, give or take. If it slips a week, that's still plenty of time to get through everything. And then we go back and do our financial statement prep. And then after that, we would have our RAP meeting with you as the governance body. And again, the key is to ensure that we met the March 31 deadline. So, and the last page is just some, GASB is always issuing new pronouncements as things come up that we think require attention, or maybe some things that need to be considered. We have some discussions before implementation here to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do from a financial statement standpoint. The financial statements out here are done on a government accounting basis as opposed to, BAC is they're both quasi-governmental entities, but we use government accounting just because that's the way they've historically been done. And the information, I think it provides useful information to everybody that wants to read those. So if anybody has any questions on the plan or any comments that they'd like to make, I'm happy to entertain.
Joe is also well aware of the fact that we're undergoing an audit with the comptroller's office as well, so we reached out to him early on in that process. And my guess would be Joe's audit will be done far more in advance than the state's will.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell with the state. I mean, they have the time is always on their side because they're not under any real timeline restrictions in terms of when they do these things. So they tend to spend way more time that any organization could afford to spend to an outside auditor to go through that, and they tend to focus on more things that would be below the radar level from a scoping standpoint. But they will hopefully provide some good suggestions in their report when it does come out. But it's not unusual that the state, that's what the state controller does, that's what he is employed to do, is part of their oversight at the state level to come through and audit organization.
Any other questions for Joe? If not, we'll let you go, and
Well, thank you.
we'll look forward to working with you on this.
Yeah, it was always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Nice.
Either way will work.
Thank you. All right, very good.
Our next item on the agenda is the memorandum of understanding. Wyoming County Business Voice for administrative services by the IDA, the amount of $30,000. That has been the case how many years?
A long time.
Well, we moved it up to 30, right? Wasn't it 20?
Yeah, we amended it to 30 2 years ago, I believe, but it's been in place for, a long time. So,
Any questions or discussion on that one? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve execution of the contract.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nicole.
Okay. And then we have to set the meeting dates for 2025.
yeah,
It's usually the second Thursday.
second Thursday at 2:30. If the board agrees to that, sometimes we can save a little bit of money by, putting that in the legal publication that we have to, announcing all the meetings when they are. So if this date works, let's, keep rolling with it.
Anybody have a problem with that? If not, we'll set the board meeting dates for the second Thursday at 2:30 p.m. each month. And our next consideration would be the LITSAC application. And I think there's quite a summary here, multi-page.
I promise not to cover it word for word, Mr. Chairman. I think the board has been privy to the discussion of this project when we asked you for authorization to do the public hearing. So the LITSAC number, which has been around a long time, are looking to replace the building that houses their business, which is over 100 years old. They're talking about investing almost $1.7 million for a new building. It will allow for an expansion of the current footprint and also allow for bringing everyone in under one roof. Right now, if you've ever been over there, they're scattered throughout the site, the people are, which results in some inefficiencies, miscommunications, and things of that nature. So from an efficiency standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. One of the things the project will also do will help retain 21 current workers that they have, and they will then have the ability to add 8 new ones because they plan on increasing some of the distribution, wholesale distributions work that they do. for the warehouse products as well as the rental equipment, and then locally the retail goods that they sell. We had historically not been able to serve these retail types of projects, but as we discussed when we asked for the authorization for the public hearing, this type of business is really not available locally there, and it's also in a census tract that has been recognized by the Census Bureau as being highly distressed, which then makes it eligible for IDA assistance. So moving forward, that's the approach we're taking on looking for eligibility for this project. After the authorization for the public hearing, we did have that over at the Cast Isle Village Hall on December 10th, 2024. The only people in attendance were myself and Robin.
You go to a lot of meetings together, don't you?
Only across the road.
I know.
Oh, they do.
Wild party.
So obviously, there were not any objections to the proposed IDA incentives for the project. We always run a cost benefit analysis. That's the kind of the blue striped report you see in your in the packet. I like to jump over to the second page of that or the back of it, which shows what really are the proposed incentives of this project. So with a typical 10-year pilot, which this will be, we're looking at a property tax exemption over the 10 years of $146,000. We're looking at a sales tax exemption of almost $90,000, and then a mortgage recording tax exemption of a little over $16,000 for a total estimates of a little bit over $250,000. So not a large project by any means, but for these small businesses, small projects like this, if we can help them at all, especially in Cast Isle, help improve some of the local economy there, then I think the board should give that strong consideration. So there's also parts of the application in here that talks about the description of the project, and the signatures and the job numbers. And it was certified by the president, by the way, who is Pam Bliss, who this is a woman, certified woman and minority-owned business. So this is a family-run operation. Pam and her husband Bill run it, and now their son Bradley is involved in the project. He is there full-time, and there's a possibility of one other child maybe coming back and working in the business as well. So they're really setting this business up for kind of the next generation of business growth and opportunity. The next thing in your packet is a resolution that was prepared by council for the project. I won't read that, but you certainly can. And then last but not least, I want to make sure the board knows that they went through the secret process for this project, which was a short environmental assessment form. The IDA has determined that there is no significant environmental impacts identified because of this project, and we have signed off on it as the lead agent. So with that, I would present that to the board as the ELITSAT project.
Jim, are they targeting mostly larger projects, construction, or also residential in their increase in business?
They're trying to grow, I think, a little bit more on the side of the wholesale and distribution stuff, the commercial side of things. I think that's where they see the biggest opportunity. I mean, retail, you know, the retail market locally, it's not a real dense market. So they're thinking.
That's kind of why I asked. I don't.
Yeah, and then the rental business, by the way, seems to attract a lot of interest from areas like Buffalo, Rochester, because there's just not a lot of these companies that are doing it. And if you've ever seen the list of equipment that they rent over there, they have everything.
It's very reasonable.
Just for my edification, review the history of the people that I would know who ran this back
Okay.
50 years ago.
If 50 years ago? Let's see. You're really pushing me here.
All right, Ford.
I think when I first came here, it was Sally Bliss that was running. Her real name was Sarah, but she went by Sally.
She recently passed away.
She did.
Year ago. Year maybe.
And she was of Van Arsdale, as I recall.
And she was also, more importantly, a Silver Lake sailor.
That is right.
We used
Those
to
are
have,
few and far between, by the way.
we used to have some strong language used in her presence.
Sally was a good community-based person. When I first came here, she was involved with a lot of different organizations and community groups. And you know, to the credit of the business, the family members have also been doing that and keeping that going as well. But yeah, good family-owned company for a long time.
Jim, I got a couple of questions, not about this, well, this location for this census distressed, is that just for that parcel, or is it the whole village of Cast Isle, or?
Actually, it's much larger than you think, Doug. It's the entire village, but it's also any municipality that's contiguous to the village of Castile.
And any census tract that is contiguous,
That's right.
right?
It's what?
That is contiguous. So it's the census tract and any that touch it. So I think you have a map of this somewhere.
We
Jim,
do.
right?
I do.
Yep.
So Gainesville technically could be there. It even touches parts of Perry.
Well, the business right across the road, the Cast Isle Ag Service, could probably use a little updating.
Did Marty, he sold that, right?
Yeah, Joe Police owns it,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't know when we talked about it, you know, I said, but
Yeah.
I thought, is this just for like a certain area, or?
No, it's village wide. So
That's every bit of, it's critical to being up there.
And then a lot of other businesses that could benefit from it. The opportunity was right.
So this is an elementary question, I should know the answer. Discounted value, what they're looking for is $252 and a property tax exemption. So the exchange of cash, does any money ever exchange, or they just don't have to? Just explain the process of that $252, how that gets funded.
So they're not gonna pay any, let's start with the sales tax, we'll knock that one off first.
Yep.
Anything related to the project that's subject to sales tax is exempt.
And so the state accepts that, it's just, no, they just don't, and we don't, our organization doesn't contribute to it, it's simply.
It's an exemption.
It's an exemption.
Gotcha.
It includes the state portion and the county portion. So
Okay.
it's the entire 8%.
Gotcha.
The mortgage recording tax, the county charges 1.25% of any mortgage that's recorded. It's based on the dollar amount of the mortgage. And because of that, they are going to save that $16,000. And the property tax savings is they're essentially going to pay the property taxes through a tax bill. They're going to come. This property is actually coming off the tax rolls, but they're going to continue to pay the level of taxes that they have on it now through a tax bill through the taxing jurisdictions for a period of 5 years with no increase.
Oh, because of the improvements would have increased it, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, and then starting at 5, in the 5th year, it goes up 20%, 20%, 20%.
Okay.
So that's really how it works.
And so they only qualify, we're, the only way they qualify that is they come through us.
There's nobody else that can offer that.
There's no one else who can offer that. Okay. Fair enough, thank you.
I mean, they could go through a 485B technically, but it's a much smaller exemption and it's much shorter period of time.
And this group, your staff helps with all the administrative, the paperwork and qualifications.
Yeah, we'll notify all the taxing jurisdictions that this project, if it gets approved, is approved, and then it'll immediately go to the tax exempt roll when we close it. And then taxing jurisdiction will be notified by certified mail by this organization that's officially, they have to do tax bills for a period of the pilot that's covering this project.
And then and it's retaining the 21 with the anticipation of creating 8.
Correct.
And that's
over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
When they started.
Gonna start in the spring. So they claim.
I-
This is a new guy.
I don't know.
I don't know what, yeah, well, Phil, man.
That's important.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the application.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I'll let you speak to 3B.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board knows, we have a policy we changed a couple years back that we require 20% of our fee, 20% of the attorney fees on projects before we will release to a approved project their sales tax exemption letter and issue them a project agreement. In the Alley Cat circumstances, they're trying to figure out, since it will be a sizable fee to the IDA, and you can see on the agenda there, it's the total fee is going to be 1.6 million. And you saw in the financials that they've already paid 300,000, which is 20%. So what the company has proposed is they want to bump us that 20% up to 1/3, and then go to a 1/3 the second year for the fee, and then the final third for the third year. I asked them for something in writing, and I did not get it for what they're proposing. So I'm suggesting we don't take any action on this. I've been in contact with Sean Perry several times on this, and as long as we're not going to take any action on this and we have this item on the agenda, council and staff have been wrestling with another issue that has come up with the Alley Cat project, and that is they've never clearly identified for us all the projects and the project descriptions. A total of 28 parcels for this project. We don't have legal descriptions for all of them. We're essentially looking at 28 different little projects where we have to have all the legal work done for all these parcels. Well, what's come up during that assessment or that analysis is that there are 2 parcels that they need for turning radius and for a waiver of a fall zone that are in taxing jurisdictions that weren't notified by us through our deviation notice when we issued, we're going to deviate on this project for a pilot. So Letchworth School has a site in their district, and then we have another one in Arcade.
Eagle.
Town of Eagle, I'm sorry. Yeah, Arcade's already taken care of. So because we don't have all the parcels covered, we think that there's a possibility we might have to go back to the drawing board a little bit with this. So just to keep things moving along, I mean, they could easily just say, well, we're going to drop those 2 parcels from this and we'd be all set. Well, they haven't done that yet.
That's right. And so to give a little bit more color to what Jim's saying, we got a spreadsheet of the 28 parcels that have finally identified where they were located. And that's when we determined at that point that they were located in taxing jurisdictions that we had not notified. So that is what we've been working with. We were told initially that their lender wants all those parcels as part of the pilot. I responded, I said, okay, well, we have some issues then. So that's really what Jim is talking about. It's possible the lender may decide, well, we really don't want those. But I will tell you that those turning radius improvements are needed, right? You can't really get the blades to where they need to go if you don't have those easements to turn the corner. So if a lender wanted to foreclose on this project and step into the shoes of the company, they would want all the rights of the company, which means that if they were going to step in, the IDA deal should look the same. So my sense is, and we don't have it nailed down, but timing's everything, right, Jim?
Yeah, so what we're proposing today is if indeed we have to go back and kind of restart this, we'd like the board to authorize us to do a public hearing once again for this project. And at least we'd have that authorization under our belt. And if we need to do that, we can do that and then come back for the next
With
meeting.
an
Because-
amended resolution.
Yeah, because they're talking like they want to close this thing by, what they tell us, by the end of the month or something like that, which is not gonna happen.
My attorney is gonna have the road use agreement to look over by then.
You know,
Just got it yesterday.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Hurry up.
mixed bag.
Yeah, they want to hurry up, but then they just, when you ask for the details that you really need, they just don't come through with it. And then they promise you stuff and then it doesn't come through. And so we'll
I'll light them up.
go as fast as we can, but we want to make sure
They
that,
don't look-
but at least by getting the authorization for the public hearing, should we have to go back to that, we'll have that in our back pocket.
Gonna have it in our gate. Over here.
Probably, yeah.
Well,
We're gonna have
would
two.
we have to have it in
Oh,
legal?
absolutely.
You have two.
You gotta have one in each of the
We do it
municipalities that
both.
are affected.
Each municipality.
Yeah.
We'd have to redo the one in Arcade?
I think so, because the other part of this is that the parcels that, there are parcels that are now part of this project. They gave us a list remember, this is an old project. You guys approved it in 2020. There's a list of 27 SPLs that are shown in that resolution. When we went back, when they finally gave us the information, we compared it. There's 13 different parcels. So the ones in Arcade aren't even identified correctly. I think from an agency standpoint, we should be approving projects on the properties that are relevant to the project.
Yeah.
So I think we have to do it over again. I don't, even if we could solve that other problem with Eagle, which would be nice, I don't think it fixes the Arcade issue. I don't.
So the parcel that you're saying is an Eagle is also it's the same one that would be for the Ledgewood School,
That's right.
but is it?
There's
where-
one also that is in Arcade. It's on that list that I gave you.
Okay,
There's one that's in Arcade, but it's still Letchworth too.
Okay.
So there may be, I think there's 3 parcels where that's a
Okay.
problem.
and those are also where turbines are gonna be, or they,
No, these are the ancillary requirements where you have
Turning
setback
radius.
waivers, where you have turning radius easements, those kind of things.
so they won't really affect the pilot payments?
Maybe. Once you introduce another taxing jurisdiction, then there's some question to that. I can't speak to that. But I think it would be, I would agree with Jim, it would be helpful if we had some flexibility, because we certainly want to work with the developer. The board has been very clear that they want the project. We're trying to be responsive, I think, to what they're telling us in good faith. But it's a very big project, with a lot of moving pieces.
And that's just here in Wyoming County.
Yes, and I would
They've
say
got
this, that the
2 other
plan,
counties are working on it.
exactly, the plan is also to close these simultaneously with Allegheny IDA and with Cat County IDA. And I think in Cat County, they only recently approved their public hearing
They did.
and had it. So still feel like we're further ahead on this from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I've been getting calls from Cat County IDA wondering how we're doing things and all that. So they are a little bit behind us.
Yeah.
A lot behind us, actually. So,
Is there still the publicity issue we had here a couple of years ago? Height of the thing, remember you brought that to my attention about the paper down in, I can't remember what the paper was published, but they had some incorrect information. They published some letters that were troublesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is still around, but I think Doug has let me know anyway that it's gonna go.
I mean, the state, this is a project that went through the state
Yeah.
approval
Yep.
process.
It's coming no matter what.
Yeah.
And, I've said this several times. If the municipality doesn't get in line, you're getting nothing. Your host community agreement, payments, nothing.
Right.
The state takes the money. So, and I've thought about this Cattaraugus County thing, and I think I've said this before, and I don't care if I'm on TV or not. You take Ellicottville, that's the goose that's laying the golden egg in Cattaraugus County. So, but in Wyoming and Allegheny, not quite as flush cash-wise as Cattaraugus is. So, but they dragged their feet, spent the town of Farmersville, and Freedom, I talked with the supervisor in Freedom Friday. They're all set to go, it's ready to roll. It's the IDA that's in the county legislature. It's been a problem. But it's coming, so.
So would you like a motion to authorize?
Please do.
Here.
I'll make it.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
And if council could draft it.
I'm waiting for that first check.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded? Anybody second?
Did we get a second?
No, we need a second.
To be honest with you, I'm not following a lot of this, so I don't know what I'm really voting on. I understand that there's complications with other counties. There's issues with the jurisdiction and approval. You made it?
Tom,
You need to vote.
I'll put
No, I
it,
didn't
I'll
hear
make
you.
it easy for you. There's a $500,000 a year for arcade. Let's go for it.
I'm bet.
For 20 years.
Who's holding it up as eligible?
Well, not really. That's all gone.
The state's gonna come and mandate it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you wanna participate and approve everything, you get the cash.
You get a host community agreement.
Okay, and then therefore, if you don't, I'll just take it back to Albany and spend it on
They're
something else.
going, yeah.
And this is really just to hold public hearings.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The motion is just to hold a public hearing.
That's correct.
Oh,
Two public hearings.
okay,
Yes.
I second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
You don't have to hide that right there.
That I understand.
You understand that cash then, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, that part I got real quick. And I understand the state mandating it. In order to make it adaptable to the community, they have to give them some incentives.
Mhm.
Most of you does that, I get it.
All right, is there a report from?
Yeah, quickly, just some quick updates. I'm still working with the gentleman that built the microtel here in Warsaw about building one in Arcade. They're working on putting in a consolidated funding application to Empire State Development for a grant. We met with Empire State Development. That looks pretty promising. The grant is due in March, and in the meantime, I'm having discussions with National Fuel Gas about getting gas back to that site because they want that. It's only about 1,200 feet, but the interesting thing about the way things are happening in New York State now, that in order for them to extend natural gas, there has to be some justification on the part of the developer showing why he can't use electricity and he has to use gas. And then there's things related to the hotel project that eventually will come in terms of energy efficient products, energy efficient equipment. So there's a lot of mandates. And then on top of that, that prevailing wage thing that came in for projects over $5 million, where you, if you get more than 1/3 of the total capital cost of a project, you have to pay prevailing wage. Our developer is saying, if that's the case, I'm not doing this project. So we're watching very closely on where we come in with public assistance on this project. And so it's just been kind of a stop and go type of thing. And then, but everything is still on track. They're interested in moving forward with that, but it's going to take a lot of manipulating.
What's the threshold again for prevailing wage? What do you know?
It's any project over $5 million.
If 30% of the benefit or that cost is coming from an incentive.
Yeah, so the public benefits cannot be greater than 30% of the total project.
Could you say that last thing again? Public benefit?
So public benefits means they're applying for a grant from the state. They will be applying for IDA incentives. Both of those things are public benefits that are going to be offered to a project. We have to make sure that both of those together are not greater than 30% of the total project.
Where does the 5 million come in?
That's a number of the
That's the
state put
threshold.
out. and Put it in.
So any-
It's not the higher up.
No, so the 5 million, Tom, is a threshold for when you have to start looking at this issue. Any project under 5 million,
Okay,
it never comes up.
so the 30% doesn't apply to anything
Doesn't.
below.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is a proposed $10 million project.
That, we looked at that seriously how many years ago?
Yeah, we tried to kill it at the state level when it was just legislation, but we knew it would come back to bite us.
I mean, does that include, I'm just thinking other projects such as agriculture, I mean, does that apply? to
They're exempt.
those?
Anyways, that's where we are with that. Just happy news all the way around today. I'm working with the GRE on a project lead for the API buildings over in Arcade. That one is still pending. It's an advanced manufacturer. Working with Prestolite and more specifically the parent company Broad Ocean Motors from China. They're talking about planning some projects over there, would take down some old buildings, put up some new stuff, really bring in a couple more lines of production. All good stuff that is in the pipeline that they're discussing which way they kind of head with that. Trying to bring in a consultant to work with them a little bit on assessing really what the best way to go is. I did go visit the Dell Collective project that the BAC financed over in Porterfield, that Bluestone one, they call it the cabin. What a remarkable job she does on the project.
She does a great job.
Oh, my Lord. And she, when I was over there, they opened in August, and I think I got over there in, I don't know, maybe November, late November. And they had already generated $30,000 in revenue from August to November, just on that property alone. And now they're having some discussions with us about, they got approved for one of those downtown revitalization projects over in the village of Perry, where they want to do the same thing on an old building that they bought on Main Street. So we're working with them to see what their plans are for that as well.
This is the Asborn?
Yes. The Amanda part of it. Again, we'll talk to her. I'm having some discussion with Mark Hortz. They want to set up a small potato bagging operation over there. So we're looking at the possibility of a grant through the state for that. And then also I attended AES is the wind replacement project over in the town of Eagle. They had a meeting a while back in over at Bliss at the community center, where they talked about here's how the project's going to move forward, and then they're going to go through the state siting process, which is now called 94C, and then what they're proposing. So with that Eagle replacement project, they got, as you know, a large allocation of repower from NYSERDA to replace the power output currently of the 67 turbines that are there. So those 67 turbines are going to be taken down completely over time as they begin putting up new ones. And the total new ones are going to be only 25. So they're going from 67 to 25, but they are going to be a little taller and a little bit bigger generators on them.
Put out the same amount of power.
Same amount of power.
Maybe 400 feet.
Those are, yeah, the new ones, they're going to be over 600 feet.
What do they do? They're under an enormous amount of base concrete.
Their plan is to take them down and remediate to at least 4 feet above surface ground. Leave the rest.
I went through that years ago in Castile. People didn't want it. And they come up with 3 foot. Well, unless you got a watchdog there, you know what that is. And just propose, you put 400 yards in, you take 400 out.
Mhm.
That wasn't gonna happen, so it says, you're right, it's not gonna happen. That ended the project, which was,
I think one of the positive things about this is, there's been some concern about the overhead lines from AES, especially when you go down like, what was that? Telegraph Road. We're talking about, burying those under the ground.
Centerville Road.
Yeah.
They all should be very.
I asked the guy when the Noble was doing the first one, just how come you don't bury them out? It's just too expensive.
So that's where we are with economic development projects. Just some quick things about the business center, since you don't get a lot of news about them. We did close on a micro loan for a horse boarding operation in Gainesville called Easy Star Boarding, $50,000. There's a couple that moved here from the North Country. Closed on that loan. Just today at 1 o'clock, we closed on a loan for Parker Bray over in Strikersville. He's the grandson of John and Carol Schultz, which used to own the feed mill over there. Parker has a sign business that he has started, and he's doing really well with it, so we provided a loan to him as well. And then we did a couple loans, the Laura's Cakes and More, which if you've had a sample of their cookies over there, she came in and got a $10,000 loan. And then another small startup company called Build Quality LLC. It's a new startup in which any new housing project now has to be required to do testing for leakages and energy efficiency and all that stuff. This business is buying some equipment that can actually come in once construction is being done to verify that you're maximizing the full protection from leakages and things like that from new construction projects. So we did a small loan there. And then we also have a loan pending with a gentleman that has recently purchased the Village Cafe over on Water Street in Pike, and opening that restaurant back up. And then on the EPA cleanup project for MK, you'd be happy to know that we are out of the ownership business for that property through our LLC. We have transferred the property to a new LLC, which is one of Frontier Global Companies, our designated developer. They're calling the new corporation the 58 Church Street LLC. And our developer agreement with them calls for them to get it applied for the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program within 6 to 9 months. And then they can begin working on getting the site, the additional remediation done, like taking the petroleum tanks out, and then start with the redevelopment of the site for what they're proposing as a market rate senior housing project. So that's my report.
That's the board property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I would like to go into executive session here. And once again, rely on council to have me do it correctly. Now, I just have to announce that,
You just,
and we vote go into.
correct.
this
We
session.
need a motion and a second to go into
Make a
executive session.
motion to go into executive session.
Started.
All in favor?
Aye.
motion once you turn the camera
Around.
on. Yeah, around, exactly.
I was wondering
I
what
kind of like
that.
that look, the other look better.
Right.
The scenic look, we're getting that.
Looking at birds other than.
That's right, getting the snow forecast.
It was a very pretty picture. It was actually.
Okay,
When they have.
so I would like to, I can
That's not normal.
announce the decision as far as compensation.
Yeah, so you need a motion and a second.
I need a motion to
Want to make it
increase
done?
the compensation of all the employees by 4% effective January 1st, I believe. And I need a motion to that effect. And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then, is there any other business that anyone has? If not, announce the next meeting will be February 13th, 2025. And if there's any snow, I won't be here. And
You still have that snowmobile, don't you?
even Canada has been letting us down, because we have always gone to Canada, and we had a tentative schedule to leave the second, but they pushed it back another week because huge areas above in Quebec have no snow,
No kidding.
no snow.
Wow.
Anyway,
We need a motion to adjourn.
I thought it was over.
I'll make that version.
Thank you.
but they're busy doing it.
Would you like a second?
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
You get your paper.
Yep.
Now, we're going to have a very lightning DAC